Welcome to the deep dive. You know, some topics really make you pause and think about the immense power of faith, how it can be this incredible force for good, but also, well, how it can sometimes be twisted, manipulated. And today we're plunging into one of those really complex issues. It involves a globally recognized religious figure. Our focus for this deep dive is Apollo Carrion Quibeloy. He's the Filipino televangelist who claims he's the appointed son of God, and his organization, the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, or KOJC. So our mission, it's to basically take you through this whole stack of sources we've gathered. We're talking FBI reports, U.S. criminal complaints, Philippine Senate probes, news articles from places like the New York Times and the Daily Mail, even social media chatter. And the goal is to unpack these really serious allegations against KOJC, particularly the ones about child manipulation and street begging. We want to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you, help you understand the KOJC structure, the specifics of these allegations, and importantly, how they connect to the bigger picture of, well, mendicancy, of begging in the Philippines. Think of it as a shortcut to getting properly informed on a really crucial and sensitive issue. So, okay, let's unpack this. It's a deep dive into faith, global allegations, and the vulnerability of children. Right. Let's maybe start by establishing who Apollo Quibeloy is and the Kingdom of Jesus Christ itself. So, he founded KOJC back in 1985, right, based in Davao City in the Philippines.
That's right. And his central claim, which is pretty extraordinary, is that he's the appointed son of God.
Yeah. And that claim, plus what sources definitely describe as, serious charisma, has helped KOJC grow massively. We're talking an estimated 6 million members worldwide.
6 million, yeah. And the church really emphasizes what's called prosperity theology.
Ah, right. The idea that spiritual rewards can mean material wealth, too.
Exactly. And they lean heavily on Quibeloy's claimed divine authority. He's even said he has supernatural powers, like stopping earthquakes.
He really said that?
He
Wow.
did. And according to the sources, followers genuinely seem to believe it. This has given him and the church huge influence, especially in the Philippines.
When you see that kind of really rapid growth, especially with claims like that, what do you think is the key to that initial pull?
Well, that's a great question,
Hmm.
because it gets to the heart of how these groups gain traction, doesn't it?
Hmm.
What's fascinating here, I think, is how that fast growth and global reach isn't just about his charisma. It's also about those, clear, tangible promises tied to prosperity theology, especially appealing, perhaps, for people facing economic hardship.
Right. Offer spiritual salvation, but also maybe a path to a better life, materially.
Precisely, a powerful combination. But then as you look closer, that initial promise sits right alongside these incredibly serious accusations that have followed him.
And they are severe. Despite all that influence, KOJC has faced accusations of, well, human trafficking, sexual abuse, child exploitation, really heady stuff.
hmm And Quibeloy himself, he's been on the FBI's most wanted list since 2022.
Right. And because of how it's structured, very authoritarian,
Mm.
members expected to obey Quibeloy without question, and these sort of isolationist practices, like housing members in guarded compounds.
Yeah, cut off from the outside world.
Exactly. The term cult often comes up. We even saw a post on X from 2025 calling KOJC a manipulative sect exploiting faith for profit. It's a starkly different picture.
Very different from the one presented to followers, yeah.
So as I was going through these FBI reports, what really stood out, frankly, it was shocking, was just the sheer scale of the alleged financial gain. And these really, truly disturbing details about coercion, specifically in the U.S. operations.
Okay.
So, January 2020, the FBI makes these big arrests. 3 KOJC administrators, Gia Cabaxlan, Marissa Duenas, Amanda Estepar, picked up in California and Virginia, all linked to this alleged scheme.
Right. I remember reading about that. What was the scheme exactly?
Well, they were allegedly running this sophisticated human trafficking ring. It apparently involved bringing Filipino members to the U.S., but under false pretenses, like saying they were coming for musical events or something similar.
Okay, so deception from the start.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And once they arrived, reports say their passports were taken, confiscated. And then they were forced to beg on the streets.
Forced begging. Wow.
Yeah.
And not for themselves, but for a KOJC-affiliated nonprofit. It's called the Children's Joy Foundation.
Children's Joy.
Isn't
Sounds
that right?
splendid. Right. It claims to help poor Filipino kids. But according to the criminal complaint, this begging scheme raised a staggering $20 million between 2014 and 2019.
$20 million through street begging.
That's the allegation. And apparently a lot of that money, instead of going to charity, went to fund luxury stuff. Think like a Bentley, a mansion in Calabasas.
Oh, come on. A Bentley. from forced begging money allegedly meant for poor kids. That's
Okay.
audacious, doesn't even cover it.
It's pretty incredible, if true. But here's where it gets, for me, just truly heartbreaking. Children were reportedly among those coerced into begging.
Children too? Oh, no.
Yeah, sent out onto U.S. streets, strict quotas. Victims described being, overworked, underfed, threatened if they didn't bring back enough money.
That's horrifying.
And a New York Times report from 2020 even mentions some kids were forced into sham marriages or put on fraudulent student visas just to keep them in the U.S.
Good grief. That adds a whole other layer of exploitation. Just awful.
It really is. And when you look at the mechanisms they allegedly used, it wasn't just random. It seems like a deeply ingrained system of control. How does an organization even get that level of control over people to make them do something like this?
That's the crucial question, isn't it?
Is it-
Because it reveals how insidious these alleged systems can be. It's not just about one charismatic leader, though that's part of it. It's about leveraging vulnerabilities systemically.
Okay. Like how?
Well, first there's the religious authority aspect. Quibble's claim to be the appointed son of God fosters this intense obedience, right? Members are reportedly taught that defying him means, like, serious spiritual consequences.
So fear is a factor.
Definitely. A 2024 Al Jazeera report mentioned kids in KOJC schools are apparently indoctrinated really young. They see Quibbleoy almost like a messiah figure. Imagine growing up with that belief system.
Yeah, that would be powerful.
Then there's economic coercion. A lot of KOJC members apparently come from impoverished backgrounds. So for them, participating in church activities, maybe even including begging, might feel like a path to salvation, or even just some kind of financial relief, however indirect.
So they're exploiting hope?
It looks that way.
Ah.
The U.S. case showed members were allegedly promised spiritual rewards for meeting those begging quotas. So it turns desperation into a tool for compliance.
Okay, so religious authority, economic coercion.
Well,
What else?
isolation is key. That DeVal compound, for instance. It reportedly isolates members, cuts them off from outside influences, different perspectives.
Right, keeps them in the bubble.
Exactly. And children, especially if they're separated from family or friends outside KOJC, they're incredibly vulnerable in that kind of environment. We saw allegations of forced labor and abuse come up in that 2024 Senate probe in the Philippines. It systematically removes their support network.
Wow. And the last piece.
Exploitation of poverty itself. I mean, in the Philippines, you have something like 4.5 million people homeless. In that context, an organization like KOJC could potentially exploit that desperation, encouraging or worse, coercing kids to beg, maybe framing it as charitable work for their families or the church.
So it twists the idea of charity completely on its head, using vulnerability instead of helping it.
Precisely. It's not alleviating suffering, it's allegedly amplifying and exploiting it.
So what does this all mean for the Philippines then? Because the U.S. case is shocking, but it happened overseas. Does it connect back?
Well, that U.S. trafficking case isn't just about fraud, is it? It feels like a potential blueprint. It shows how deep poverty and unchecked religious authority could potentially be weaponized, turning vulnerable people,
Yeah.
especially kids, into, well, commodities, even across borders.
Right. So while there's no, definitive proof saying KOJC is orchestrating child begging in the Philippines on a mass scale,
No smoking gun found publicly, right?
the U.S. case definitely suggests a pattern, doesn't it? A pattern of exploiting vulnerable members that's, frankly, deeply concerning for the situation there, too.
Absolutely. And you have to look at the context in the Philippines. It creates, unfortunately, fertile ground for these kinds of practices.
Yeah, you mentioned the poverty stats, 18.1% below the poverty line in 2023, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. That's huge.
It is. And street begging, especially by children, it's just rampant in cities like Metro Manila. There's an estimate of, 250,000 street children working as vendors, scavengers, or beggars.
250,000 kids.
It's a massive problem.
Yeah.
And there was a Philstar report back in 2012 suggesting that syndicates, not necessarily religious groups, but organized crime groups, might control many child beggars in Manila. Mentioned a handler figure called Empoy, organizing kids as young as 4.
So it's a known, existing problem, possibly run by organized groups already.
Exactly. It's been part of the landscape for a long time. Now, there have been unverified claims floating around, like that 2025 Reddit thread you mentioned, linking KOJC kids to begging and DeVal.
But unverified, yeah. Need to stress that.
Absolutely. No concrete proof tying KOJC directly to widespread child begging locally yet. However, that 2024 Daily Mail description of the DeVal compound calling it a sprawling underground lair with rooms for alleged sex slaves.
Yeah, that description was chilling.
It certainly suggests a highly controlled, very secretive environment. And in that kind of place, you have to wonder if manipulation could extend to children in other ways, too, including potentially organized begging. The dots, well, they seem worryingly close together, even if not fully connected by public evidence yet.
Right, so the U.S. allegations create this strong suspicion, especially when you layer it over the existing challenges of poverty and street begging right there in the Philippines.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the basic vulnerability of children living in poverty makes them targets. Period. Regardless of who is exploiting them, whether it's a religious group, a criminal syndicate, or someone else.
Yeah.
This isn't just about KOJC, it's a fundamental public health and social crisis. The act of begging itself, which seems like it's for survival, can actually become a tool that deepens the victim's dependency and isolation. It reinforces the exploiter's power, makes it almost impossible to escape. It's a terrible web.
And the dangers for the kids themselves are immense, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Severe, multifaceted dangers.
Yeah.
Physically, think about it, traffic accidents, exposure to weather. A 2019 study noted all sorts of health issues among vagrants, which obviously includes kids on the street.
And psychologically?
Devastating.
Yeah.
Coercion, the exploitation.
Right.
It just erodes their self-esteem. It can foster antisocial behavior. There was a Los Angeles Times report way back in '87 highlighting that kind of trauma.
And socially, too, I imagine, the stigma.
Huge stigma. Being known as a bigger kid, it drastically reduces their chances of getting back into school, integrating into society later on. It's truly heartbreaking what so many face.
So it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of this, but it's important, like you said, not just to point fingers, but to understand what's being done or what could be done to protect these kids. What are some of the solutions or efforts people are talking about in 2025?
Well, strengthening enforcement seems paramount. You've got the DSWD, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, and the police. They really need to step up anti-trafficking operations.
And enforce that old anti-mendicancy law, right? From
Right.
1978.
Exactly. Presidential Decree 1563. It exists, but reports suggest enforcement is often lax. That 2024 Senate probe into KOJC, led by Senator Risa Hontiveros, that's a really important step towards accountability, though. Shows there is political will sometimes.
Okay, so enforcement is one part. What else?
Sustainable rehabilitation programs are crucial. It's not enough just to rescue kids from the street. A 2023 study from Sorsogon, for example, recommended programs offering education, maybe vocational training, and definitely psychological support.
Right, got to break that cycle of dependency. Give them real alternatives.
Exactly. Give them pathways to a different future.
What about public awareness? Does that play a role?
Big role. The DSWD was urging campaigns back in 2019 to promote responsible assistance, basically encouraging people to donate through organized charities, rather than just giving cash directly to kids on the street.
Because giving on the street might actually fuel the problem, right? Keep the syndicates or handlers in business.
Potentially, yes. It's about channeling generosity effectively, changing public behavior so it genuinely helps, not harms.
And cooperation across borders seems important too, given the U.S. case.
Definitely. The FBI's KOJC arrests really highlight how vital international collaboration is for dismantling these trafficking networks. The Philippines could potentially adopt similar levels of vigilance locally, learning from that.
And finally, policy. Laws.
Yeah, policy reform matters. Things like increasing the age of consent, which happened in the Philippines in 2022, raising it to 16. That can help deter exploitation by increasing penalties for abusers and handlers. It's all part of strengthening the legal framework protecting children.
So it's clear, it's complex, needs action on multiple fronts: enforcement, rehab, public awareness, international cooperation, policy.
Absolutely. No single magic bullet. It requires sustained, multi-pronged effort.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive then, we've looked at these really serious allegations against KOJC, particularly focusing on the U.S. case involving child manipulation, forced begging, and significant alleged financial gain.
And we've explored the alleged mechanisms of control, how religious authority, economic pressure, isolation, and poverty itself can be weaponized.
Right. And we've tried to connect these potential patterns to the wider, frankly tragic context of child begging and exploitation that already exists in the Philippines, whether linked to specific groups or broader social issues.
It's a sobering picture.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave you, our listener, with is this. Consider how easily faith or just sheer desperation can be leveraged. And what's our collective responsibility when vulnerable people, especially children, are targeted for profit, whether it's by religious groups, criminal syndicates, or anyone else? What stands out to you from this deep dive?